Hello and welcome back to The Gist. I'm your host, Chris Vetrano, here every week to break down all the things happening in pop culture and chat with the people that bring it to life. You know today's guest from her roles in the CW's The Flash and the hilarious short on HBO Max Coffee Shop Names. Plus, you'll get to see her this fall star opposite Schitt's Creek star Emily Hampshire in Hulu's horror comedy Appendage. Please welcome to The Gist writer and actress Kausar Mohammed.
Hey y'all, what's up? Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. You do so many things, and I want to try to cover as many of them today as possible. But I first wanted to start by just chatting about Appendage, because I know that it was just screened at South by Southwest. So tell us a little bit about the film and then what we can expect to see this fall on Hulu.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a horror with elements of horror comedy. It's the idea of anxiety within a young up-and-coming fashion designer physically manifesting, which is super relatable because anxiety is something everybody deals with. So I play Esther, Hannah's best friend. I'm also a fashion designer, and our friendship is sort of what guides the film along the way in terms of pushing things through and making things better. So it's really fun. I love the role. Esther's kind of Hannah's foil in some ways, more easygoing, but also has her own things happening. But it's ultimately their friendship that pulls things out and keeps things going.
I love that. And I always love the genre of like horror comedy, because I feel like sometimes like the horror movies, it's like the gorier, the better, and the spookier, the better. But I love when there's like the comedy element of it, because it just makes it like so much more enjoyable at least from my perspective.
Me too. And I think also like for me, I think Jordan Peele said this once or something along these lines of like, they almost follow the same beats. Like it's either you're, building up to a scare or building up to a laugh. So that's why I love horror comedy so much. In fact, when it's writing, the only thing I'm either writing is like comedy or horror. So they naturally kind of like sometimes, blend into each other, into their world. So I love the genre. And I think it's like a golden age for not only the horror genre, but horror comedies right now. We're seeing amazing, hilarious ones in ways we haven't seen before, from like The Blackening to like Bodies. So I'm here for it.
Yeah.
And I want more of it. And Appendage too. Appendage coming out in the fall on Hulu.
Yeah, no, I definitely will be checking that out. I'm a big Schitt's Creek fan, so I know Stevie or Emily as Stevie. And were you a fan of that show before starting to work with her? And what was that kind of like?
I mean, the show's iconic. It's so funny. Yeah. Ensemble cast, and Emily is amazing as Stevie and also as Claudia in this film, and really brings a really dope. I'm not going to give away too much, but a really good performance that is brilliant. It's brilliant. And the whole cast is brilliant. Yeah. Hadley Robinson, who plays Hannah, she puts it down. And if anything, just go see it, to go see her amazing performance. She's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I love seeing like, Emily was kind of like the side character, didn't get as like much attention as the kind of the four, but so it's great to see like her doing this kind of like starring role post Schitt's fame and all the popularity that it had. So that's awesome. Well, and I obviously also know that you're on the CW's The Flash. And so I'm going to admit it, I'm not a big superhero comic book person, because I feel like you're either one or you're the other. Like there's no in between for these fans.
Yeah. It's 1 or 100. I totally feel you, Chris. I feel you. Yeah.
So I'm dying to know kind of like what it's been like kind of being in that universe, because like I said, these diehard fans, they also are very opinionated. And so what's that sort of been like to be part of that world and kind of interacting with that fan base?
Yeah, definitely. So I played Dr. Rena Dhawan, essentially her character's fast track in the DC world. What's awesome is that actually in the comic, she's a South Asian superhero, which is dope because we don't see that. There's like Miss Marvel on the Marvel side, and then I guess we have Rena Dhawan on this side, which is cool. And I'm, maybe there's others out there too, but I'm also learning into the superhero world. So it's great for me too. So any fans out there who know more than me about South Asian superheroes, let me know. But it's been fun. I was on season 8, and they just wrapped their series. So, but it was, I mean, I think it was over 10 years of making The Flash, and it's such a beautiful team and cast and crew and such a well-oiled machine. But being a
Yeah.
part of that, little part of that legacy, I think is so special to me. And to play a superhero, I mean, to have the super suit and all that, and those fake powers, man, those fake powers.
It makes you wish that you had them.
Right. I would love to be able to run around the world in like a millisecond.
Yeah.
You know?
If you could have any of the superpowers though, what would there be one that you would be like, I need it?
Okay, of my characters or just like in life?
Just like in life.
In life. Okay. I would definitely go for teleportation. Thought long and hard about this. I just think it's great utility. You know, you could do a lot of things, go anywhere you want. So I'm going to say teleportation. It's also like kind of practical. You know, it's kind of nice to not have to drive places. So I don't know if I'll do like a lot of superhero stuff with them, or I would just like do day-to-day stuff, like here to Trader Joe's back home. But it's
avoid the parking lot.
Or like avoid any parking garage.
Yeah, amazing.
No,
Yeah,
no one needs a parking garage. I mean, yeah.
Then you would have like no excuse for being late anywhere, unfortunately, because people would know.
Well, you know how it is, right? It's like when you're like, oh, when I'm 3 minutes away from something, that's when I show up late. Versus like, oh, if I know I have a drive, I'll be there 15 minutes early. So that'll mess me up for life.
Yeah. I feel like people are always, they always are like, oh, traffic is really bad, so I'm running a little bit late, but really they haven't left their house yet.
Right.
And they just like use that excuse. You wouldn't have that if people knew you had that superpower.
I know. So I would want teleportation, but I want no one to know I have teleportation. So
that makes sense.
To be there on the knock. No. But hopefully I would. Hopefully I try to be on time as much as I can.
No, for sure. Speaking of kind of like things that you wish that you had, I would love to know, is there a role that either like you went for and didn't get, or is there a role that you've seen in a movie or, a TV project that you're like, oh, I would have nailed that?
Oh, that's fun. Well, okay. I don't know about, I don't know. Well, what I can say is when you first asked the question, like dream role wise, if there was one thing where I was like, I just cannot like putting it out. So you know how you were like, like you can either be in the world or you can't be in the world. That's Harry Potter. I'm 100% in, 110% in, 50% in. So my dream role would be Helena Bonham Carter's Bellatrix. That for me is like, I love her in general. I love her roles. I love her career. So I don't know. I want like a slightly kooky villain with Slytherin tendencies character.
No, that sounds perfect. I mean, I whenever I've taken the online quizzes, I always end up in Slytherin.
So
I feel like I have that.
Yes. So we can we're family then.
Yeah. And I'm also a Scorpio, and I don't know if that's like sort of part of that. A Scorpio Slytherin.
Chris, I never thought about that, but 100%, I bet you all Scorpios are Slytherin.
I feel like that might be the case.
From Scorpio, but it's fine. I have like 0 Scorpio in my chart.
No, that's a good one. I think, it's those kind of epic roles, and I kind of love too, like it's one that has a lot of impact, but it wasn't like the star, because I thought you were going to say Harry. I mean, you might as well have just been like
that too. But I just want to be like evil, Maybe because I have 0 Scorpio in my life, in real life, I just want to play that.
Yeah, see, I need to like probably be the Harry, or like be like a little bit of the nicer one.
Because then it's not acting,
Exactly. No, I love that. Is there other sort of pop culture influences that you fall on that sort of either made you fall in love with this as a profession, or that you're always like, that's my go-to as like my favorite movie or my favorite pop culture moment that just makes me tick?
I love this question. It's funny. Like, I haven't actually thought about that. When I think about it, it's like so random and so small, because growing up, like, we didn't really have cable like when in my youth years. It was like Rugrats in Spanish on TV, and then California Music Channel, where I'd watch like bootylicious music videos, like from the office. So that is prime and very important to me. But I think like random things that I picked up is like Mr. Bean. I love Mr. Bean. I think it's so funny, and just like the physical comedy to me is always just like still makes me die laughing all the time. So I think that, and I remember, it's like, I almost remember like pivotal sketches, like Stewie from Mad TV too. Like, do you remember that sketch? She's like, Stewie. That for me, I can watch it and still die laughing. Mad TV, I don't even know where I saw Mad TV or where I came across it, but there would like that and the Gilly were just so formative to me. And I think maybe looking back, I think that's why maybe I ended up doing so much sketch comedy in my life, or do sketch comedy in my life. So I think those, and then also I think, this for me and probably a lot of other people, The Office. I just love a show with an ensemble cast, and even just the mockumentary fashion to me, or that realistic grounded characters. I am always like I'm dead. It has me.
Yeah, it's I feel like Coffee Shop Names has like a bit of that sort of feel, where it's like they take this like real situation of The Office. Like some of those characters, you're like, oh well, I've like worked with those people, or like known people that have worked with those characters, and there's not a lot to them in terms of like that makes them flashy for TV. It's like, it's just they're these normal people that are in an office, but they've done it in a way that makes it feel magic.
Yeah, and just like the character quirks, and I think it's an attribute of Office being brilliantly written too. But it's so fun.
Yeah. Well, and I know representation is a big thing for you, and that you are a huge advocate for diversity and inclusion. So I imagine that like also there were things that you were drawn to because of that when you were young. I mean, you mentioned even just like the Bootylicious, and I mean, The Office being like this ensemble cast that did truly like have representation in a way that we don't always see. And especially like I look back at some of my influences growing up, it was like, Clueless was my, favorite movie. And I loved that movie. And I feel like it was formative in so many ways, but it was also this like LA, and you had Stacey Dash, and you had a little bit of a mix of things that made it feel like, this is what people really look like and really are doing, and in the 90s, like how they dressed, or maybe a little bit amplified. But then I look at things like, a 90210 or something, where those were such big Saved by the Bell, and you didn't have as much of that. And so I'm curious, kind of like, is that something that you look back on from like the past that you're, really trying to like help bring that to the forefront now?
Yeah, I think for me, we've had strides in representation. We still have so much more to go. And I think a lot of the times it's like, okay, even if we're having diversity on screen, are we also having it behind screen? Are we having it from an exec level? Are we having it from a studio level? Is it all around? Because I think to me, that's when true brilliance and authenticity gets to shine. So for me, that's what I get excited about. And also just decentering the white straight male gaze, how often and historically media, storytelling, everything, Hollywood has been based off of identifying and empathizing with stories around the straight white male, which is like, okay, cool, great. And also, what are the implications of that when we cannot empathize with the Black trans Muslim person who also exists? So it's like, I think there's a real power and impact in putting our stories at the forefront, and not only at the forefront of the camera, but full 360 support on all around. So that's what I'm excited about. Not only what I'm excited about, but it's also what I want to watch. And it's also, to me, what is pushing the boundaries and is going to be the future of storytelling. Shouting out, films like Joyland right now. I just went to South by and saw Mustache. And I mean, and there's so many more stories out there who are not, not just specifically South Asian representation, but anything that has been like historically and traditionally marginalized in our community, like those are the stories I want to see because those are the stories I haven't seen. So I
Right.
think from in a very not only important to equity and inclusive way, there's also that aspect of it does save lives when we can empathize with main characters who don't look like ourselves. And I think there is market and money behind it. I mean, to be made behind it.
Do you feel like being in Hollywood, like there have been times where you feel like you've been passed up because of the color of your skin or your sexual preferences or any of that kind of thing? Or do you feel like we're starting to make strides in the right way? I mean, I know you said there's a long way to go, but
Yeah, I think a mix. Also, I feel like it's this mix of, okay, I also want to shout out all the brilliant like elders and community leaders who came before me that really paved the ground to be for me to be able to say, hey, we've made strides, you know, from Cal Penn, from Mindy Kaling was putting her work, from one of my mentors who I love so much, Fazia Mirza, who's another queer Pakistani Muslim woman. It's the work they've made where I can step and be like, okay, I feel like I have more choice now. But I think it's also been a progress. So, you know, when I first started acting, it was my access to roles were like co-stars, so one-liners, and those would stereotypically be like Muslim woman in hijab. Those would stereotypically be Muslim woman in hijab, and oh my God, also Muslim woman in hijab. So those were the roles that I had access to. And I am Muslim, but I am not specifically a Muslim woman who wears a hijab. And shout out to my Muslim sisters who do. I want them to get that role. And I also want me to be able to get a role that, you know, that it's like that I, you know, to just open up our ideas in terms of what Muslim means, because it's those stereotypes that end up holding us down. And so I feel like we've made strides. Current, and I think, but now that it's kind of gone past sort of like one-liners and, you know, like, oh, I'm grateful to have access to, you know, larger roles. It is off, like even Esther, like that wasn't written in Appendage, that wasn't written South Asian specific or anything identity specific. So I feel like there's access, but I feel like what I often feel now is either not looking queer enough or not looking Muslim enough. I know times there's been auditions for Muslim roles, but it's like in the past, not recently, but in the past, where it's like a non-Muslim person will come and wear a hijab and book the role. Versus me, I'm like, I am not going to wear a hijab because I also want to open up the minds of these people who I'm auditioning for to know that, you know, Muslim doesn't look one way. So I'll intentionally not wear one, but it'll go to the person who does wear the hijab and isn't Muslim. So, you know, it's not an accessory. It is a sacred, beautiful thing. But that's just one example of many. And I want all kinds of roles. I want the hijabi role. I want there to be hijabi roles on screen. I want there to be nuanced roles. And I want the roles to be like celebrate our identity, but also just not have us put us in boxes.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, like, you know, The Little Mermaid has kind of been this sort of, hopefully it will be a moment in time that we look back and say, like, finally, I mean, I know that it's getting a lot of backlash
for no reason,
for no reason, because they feel like Ariel was not supposed to have as dark skin as Haley does.
She was supposed to be black. Yeah, they didn't want her black.
Yeah. And, you know, and it's like, we should be in a place where, especially for a film that went from animated to live action, that like, what does it matter? And why does that have to be even part of the story in any kind of way? And, you know, I find the same, you know, obviously being a gay white man, but you know, seeing like gay white men on movies and TV, there's so much where it's just so stereotypical, and it's like disappointing when you see, like, you want to, you know, celebrate these films and these projects that give gay actors an opportunity to be one in something mainstream and put their identity out there. But then it's almost like sort of disappointing when you see that it's like so far one way that it's like almost crafting a story that continues to drive some of this like commentary behind the scenes. And so I wish that we were in a place more where, and you know, where this was just more normal. Like, you know, I look at shows like Will and Grace, where Will is like the straight gay man, right? He's the guy that just is your normal everyday, you know, lawyer. And, you know, I feel like we we have so far to go there. And so that's why I'm so curious about what that kind of experience has been for you, and being able to just show up at an audition, or, be landing a role that had no sort of identity
Yeah.
pre-selected before they cast it.
Yeah, I hear you on that, and the desire to see more and want more for our stories. So that's super real. And I think there has been more recent things where it's like, oh, it's non-identity related, and I'm excited about that. But I do feel like at the root of it is having diversity on all levels, like, from even the casting level, everything. It's like, so then at a certain point, it's like, it doesn't, we can lean into the identity if we want, or we don't have to. And that's what I look forward to. Just normalizing it. Just normalizing it.
Absolutely. Well, you wear hats on both sides of the camera. Is there one that you prefer?
Oh, that's fun. I think I go in waves. I think it's all also connected for me. I think when I'm acting or when I'm reading a script or analyzing a role, I'm thinking about the writing. When I'm writing, I'm also thinking about the character work behind it. So I feel like, to me, it's a very similar muscle that I enjoy flexing. And it's almost like, okay, am I working on my arms? Like, am I working on my arms today? Am I working on my legs today? But it's all still the butt.
Yeah. So tell us kind of like what is next for you then.
Yeah, so Appendage is coming out on Hulu in the fall. Also working on some projects that I'm really excited about that are currently in development, that are in the works. So excited to be able to share those soon, both from the writing angle and from the acting angle. And also just excited to just continue to be diving into the parts of the craft that I haven't. Like, I've been getting really into more physical roles, and like with that involve body and like different types of training. So excited for all those to be shared with the world soon, and more of that to come.
Absolutely. And, how can people out there advocate for this representation? I mean, people not even in the kind of Hollywood entertainment space, like, what can people be doing to either learn more or educate themselves? Because I think, as you said, it's so important that we start normalizing that. And so I'd love for your thoughts on that.
Yeah. In terms of stories for Hollywood, I would say watch and support and pay for diverse stories. So, for example, one thought that comes to mind is Joyride is going to be it's an Asian American fully cast of females. It looks hilarious. If you haven't seen the trailer, have you seen the trailer, Chris?
I have. It looks incredible.
Oh my God, it looks so good.
Yeah.
And, it's like showing up on the opening weekend, opening night in full numbers makes a difference. When you know something is releasing, like actually like watching it that night, whether it is, other shows that are coming out and that sort of thing. When streaming it the night of, the numbers show everything. Numbers tell people, the higher ups, that, hey, this is in demand, we want to watch it. And unfortunately, so much amazing, brilliant, well done content gets lost because, the numbers aren't there.
Right.
So I think one thing is, if you want to see more diverse stories, support those stories, like tweet about those stories, tell a friend to watch those stories. If you see an indie you love on one of your streaming sites, tell someone to watch those. For example, like India Sweets and Spices, Donkey Head, those are two brilliant indie films by South Asian female writers. Just like watch and spread and tell people to write it. And then in terms of education, I would say there's so much education on the internet, so many books available. I also have a racial equity and gender equity consulting group that I co-founded back in 2017 called Schitt Consulting. We're at Schitt Consulting Co. on Instagram. Check it out if you want more resources.
Perfect. Yeah, I think, it is really important. And the numbers is such an, interesting thing that I personally don't think of as much. I mean, obviously you hear box office, and you see when someone didn't make their, budgets in the opening weekend, and everybody considers it a flop. And then it sort of ends in this spiral where when it hits streaming, then people are talking about it flopping. And then it's like, do I even really want to watch that? And it has such a downward spiral. And it's so interesting because I've been having a lot of musical folks on the podcast, and they've been talking a lot about TikTok. And it's the same thing of like, there's these great artists that are making incredible music, but the labels right now are like, if you can show us the numbers on your socials, then we'll continue to promote it. But it's like, but if you're not paying to help me promote it, then how am I going to get those numbers? And it's this like crazy cycle that we're in. And I didn't really tie it back to kind of the film and television space the way that you did. And so, yeah, it's important to watch those things, not just, tune in when it feels convenient, but like really start making a date to like support these projects and tune in when they first come out.
Yeah. And showing up for, and I think, when you're also like within group, if like, I think representation anxiety is a thing, Chris, like you were saying, you want to see more queer roles, but often when you see them, they're not what you want to see. Yeah. And I think we feel that way often when it's like, we only get one shot. We only have this shot. So this shot has to be right. And I feel like that's such a real thing. And also, how can we put that aside in terms of like, still showing up for the movie and still, giving it its upliftment, so that we get to see more of it. Because we just need more. We just need more. And then we need to, I want to be in a place where it's like, I don't like where someone in the community could make a shitty movie and it wouldn't be the death of our community. Totally. It's like, it always feels like we have one shot. And that's so unfair. Yeah. That is not only that, but it's just a testament to who is allowed to fail and who's not allowed to fail. Yeah. So I look forward to the day that we have a shitty movie, that we can have a shitty movie and it's okay.
Yeah. No, it's very true. And I think, unfortunately, I feel like Bros was kind of that in this last year, where there was so much about how it was the first mainstream, gay romantic comedy. And then when it wasn't like showing up, it was like even the actors and stuff were getting panned for some of their reactions to the way that they were reacting to how the public was reacting. And it ended up feeding like a really negative sort of stereotype within our community that really at the end of the day, whether we loved the movie or didn't, like we should have shown up to at least support it, to send that message that we want more of that.
Right. And I feel that way about like South Asian content and Muslim content. So I feel like it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, slow steps, but believing that, when a community is in solidarity around something, that's when movement is made. So, but I'm excited and I feel like we are moving towards that. We're moving towards that and baby steps. Yeah. I'm optimistic.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. And, I love the conversation about representation. And so I appreciate you sharing that with me today. Because, as I said, I'm not always the right person to have those kind of conversations, but I love to hear from folks that are what their experiences are, and then also how to kind of get involved and support it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the right person. We're all learning, we are all learning.
Yeah. As long as we always like know that it's a safe space to learn together and make mistakes when we do. But yeah, well, I am so excited to see Appendage because like I said, it's like right up my alley, and I can't wait to check it out on Hulu this fall. But in the meantime, I know you mentioned Shift, but where can people find you to find out more about these upcoming projects and just connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm at Kausar the Person on Instagram and Twitter. So it's Kausar the Person.
I love that. Well, awesome. We'll do that. And thank you so much for coming by today and sharing your story and sharing about some of the projects that you've been on. It was wonderful to meet you, and I look forward to continuing to follow all the things that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for having me on. It was so lovely talking to you, and just glad to be able to be chatting, and appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Well, thanks to all of you for listening. Don't forget to rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode of The Gist. You can follow me at CM Vetrano on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, tune in next week for more amazing content on pop culture. Or you can go to listenisvetrano.com. And until next week, have a great weekend. And thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.